Hello and welcome to the Indiana Lawyer Podcast, your source for news and Hoosier law, brought to you by TAF. I'm Alexa Shrake, Indiana Lawyer reporter, and your host this week. I'm here with IndyBar's newest president, Lee Christie. Lee is a partner at Christie, Farrell, Lee, and Bell. He focuses his practice on accidents, medical malpractice, and wrongful death. So to start, Lee, how did you get involved with IndyBar?
Well, thank you, Alexa, for having me here on the podcast. So, IndyBar offers a lot of different opportunities for people. I did not take the traditional route because I went to night school. I had a family and worked full time and went to night school and then started working to support the family. So I did not really get involved with IndyBar other than being a member and attending some CLEs and maybe attending a function or two for probably 20 years. So it was in my 40s that I started getting active in IndyBar because I kind of recognized the benefits of the service that the IndyBar provides, and the connections that you can make through IndyBar. So it was much later than most people, because if you look at the leadership of IndyBar, it's typically a different path of getting involved early. And then in their mid-career, they're kind of in their final leadership positions, and then they trail off to get to where I am now. So I got started later, and a friend of mine invited me to be on the board of the IndyBar Foundation, which I did, and that kind of started me on my leadership progress with IndyBar.
Yeah, and what areas, have you been involved with IndyBar?
As I mentioned, I started out with the Indianapolis Bar Foundation and was just on the board of directors and continued with that for my term, and then re-up for a second term. And then I kind of thought I liked to get involved in leadership. So I ended up getting involved in leadership and was president-elect and president of the Indianapolis Bar Foundation. After that ended, I stayed actively involved with the Bar Association and started to get involved in a couple of different committees and sections. Was the chair of the Masters Division, which was a newly organized division for practitioners of 25 years or more practice, and then decided I wanted to get into the executive committee and interviewed for first vice president, eventually president-elect, and then president in 2025 of the Bar Association.
How are you feeling about your year as president of the Bar Association?
Well, I'm very excited. We have a really good executive committee with Katie Jackson-Lindsay, who's the president-elect now, and Adam Christensen, who has been a prior Indianapolis Bar Foundation president and is now the first vice president of the Bar Association. So we have a well-rounded executive committee, and we have just excellent chairs of all of our sections and divisions. They seem really energized to push forward the agenda of the Bar Association. And so I'm looking forward to this year. We do have our strategic goals that we will try to implement and further. Most of these goals are set on 3-year rolling terms. So we're in the process of that 3-year rolling term, recognizing the goals that we set and making sure they're implemented and furthering some additional goals. I think it's going to be a really fun year because we've got a new administration for the first time in 8 years at the state level with the governor. So that may be challenging, or it may be at least challenging for the Bar Association to monitor how the new administration works with the different bills and things that come out that affect our members. So we've got a very active membership committee. So that's a focus for 2025, is making sure we reach out to young lawyers and to law students to introduce them to the Bar Association and the benefits that it provides, not only to the lawyers, but also to the community, because the foundation and the association do a lot of things for the local community, not just through its members, but for the local community. So I'm excited about this year. Lots of meetings, lots of, we have 25 sections and divisions that cover almost every aspect of practice that a lawyer might have if they want to get involved in IndyBar and be involved in IndyBar.
So what are some of your plans for your year as president? Do you have certain goals just for yourself? I know you mentioned the strategic planning that you guys do that's on a 3-year basis.
Yeah, for me personally, and this was not really a strategic plan, but we've made it now part of our strategic plan. We have an initiative and forming a committee for the Community Justice Center. As you know, that opened, I think, 2 years ago. And have you been out there? Have you been out to the CJC? It's pretty sterile. It just is it's a nice facility. There's plenty of parking. The judges are separate from the lawyers and the citizens, and there's no artwork. There's nothing really that makes it a place that you feel welcome. It's you go there and you do your business and you get out. There's no restaurants. There's nothing nearby to really bring the lawyers and the community together. So one of my initiatives is I've formed a CJC committee to think about ways that we can warm that up and make it more aesthetically pleasing. Just different ideas that the committee will come up with. Can we get food out there so that there's a place to meet and to mingle or just re-energize while you're waiting for your next hearing or your next case? Can we put some things out there that make it more aesthetically pleasing? Maybe some posters of past leaders of the community, both civic and legal leaders. So these are just a bunch of ideas that hopefully the committee will come up with and we'll be able to implement with the executive committee over at the of the Marion County Judges Association. So we'll work with them and make our recommendations to the exec committee, and then the presiding judge and the exec committee can take it to their group. And hopefully over the next year or two, we'll implement some changes over there. It'll make that just a much nicer place to go to. The other thing, another agenda I have is I really want to work on public outreach, because the Bar Association sits in a pretty unique position to comment on, well, you know this from being with the Indiana Lawyer, to comment on things that are going on socially and in the community, and to educate the public on the behind the scenes type ideas of why these decisions come down, or why there's a certain regulation or law or sentence that's given. Like last year, there were some sentences that were given out by local Marion County judges that were criticized by certain state agencies. But the Bar Association came out with some response as to why those decisions were made, so that there's some background for what the judges did and why they did it, as opposed to just, this person who did this horrible crime only got X years. So I want the Bar Association to be able to do more public outreach to reach the community so that they understand the laws and the regulations that come out, and the behind the scenes, why those are fair and why that's necessary for our justice system to have those ideas and systems in place. And then the third thing, my third agenda, is to really reach out to young lawyers and law students so that we can continue this thriving membership that we have, because I think it's been very difficult for young lawyers who have come out since COVID in 2020 to understand the collegiality that our bar has. So I really want to make sure we reach out to them and let them know the benefits that the bar provides, not just in their practice area, because all of them are, as you know, right now, lawyers are busy. I mean, there's lawyer deserts out there, so there aren't enough lawyers in Indiana right now to satisfy the legal needs of our community. And being that busy, but not having connectivity to some social groups or even groups within your practice area makes it very difficult, I think, for those lawyers who are 0 to 5 years in. And we've seen they have taken kind of a back approach to this and aren't as socially involved. And I think that if we can provide some more connectivity with experienced lawyers, young lawyers, intermediate lawyers, that they can really thrive more than they will just sitting at home doing Zooms or sitting in an office doing Zoom after Zoom, but provide some benefits that the IndyBar has.
Kind of piggyback on that last thing you just said, I know I have this later in my questions, but what is some advice that you have for the young lawyers that are interested in joining IndyBar that may just be, hesitant?
Yeah, I would really stress to them that the benefits that IndyBar provides, and that is the connectivity and the networking opportunities that they may not realize they need because they're so busy with their work right now and they're just project oriented. I need to get this done for the partner. I need to get this done to pay the bills for the lights or whatever. But if they look, I would really stress to them, if you look long term of building a practice or building clientele, the best way to do that is to be involved with other lawyers who have clients, contacts, conflicts that they may be able to refer over to you. And I did, as I mentioned, I did personal injury work, and that was my sole focus. We did car accidents, truck accidents, fall downs, medical malpractice, products liability for people that are hurt. And I was actively involved in the Indiana Trial Lawyers Association, but those are all people doing the same thing I'm doing. By getting involved with the Bar Foundation and the Bar Association, I broadened that scope of people that run into those cases. They know people who are in accidents or have something happen to them. And so it was a networking opportunity to get cases referred over. Same thing with me, family law lawyers, estate lawyers, criminal lawyers. It broadened my base of people that I would refer people to. So it's really self-fulfilling for all the people that are involved. And then the second thing for the young lawyers I mentioned is just the social opportunities to get away from the stress of practicing law day by day, hour by hour, and go there and see that other lawyers maybe struggle with issues that you're struggling with, or talk with more experienced lawyers who have gone through that and your experience and talk through, here's how, don't get too bogged down on being upset right now, because in the long run, here's what happens. I think it's hard to see that might be the way it evolves when you're right in the middle of it. But if you have mentors, we have the Mentor Connect program. So if young lawyers need a mentor, I in the last week, I was brought together 3 young lawyers with separate mentors, and they were struggling in their practice area. And so those 3 lawyers now have mentors that can help them navigate their practice area. Those things alone, the Mentor Connect, the social opportunities, and all the CLEs, like I mentioned, there's 25 sections or divisions. No matter what practice area you are in, you can get access to a good CLE or a good seminar that benefits you in your practice area.
My next question, you kind of mentioned this a little bit. We have a new administration coming in for the state. And I know the legislative session is going to be starting on the day that this podcast comes out, but some of the bills have already been filed. I don't know if you've looked at them yet. I have been tracking them, Are there any that IndyBar has its eyes on or that you have your eye on? One of them that I saw was this public service attorney scholarships one. Just what are you kind of looking at for that?
Yeah, we do. We have a public outreach and public policy section. Lacey Berkshire is the chair of that, and she and her committee monitor all the bills to see what bills might affect our members. And the one you mentioned, the public service attorney scholarship, is one that's on our bill or on our agenda. There's one that came out like 1407, if I wrote it down right, that has to do with transgender issues. So those are on our watch list. We're particularly interested in the public service attorney scholarships because, it may be a way to address the shortage of lawyers that are out in some of the desert areas by offering them young lawyers the opportunity to go to an area that doesn't have lawyers or needs lawyers and forgive their debt or give them a scholarship to pay. So yeah, we do monitor all of the bills, and then the Public Policy Committee comes to the board and talks about certain ones that affect our members or might affect our members. And we do expect that with the new administration, this might be a more robust session for bills to be submitted. So we'll monitor those to make sure that anything that affects our members we bring to their attention. And as I mentioned earlier, having more public outreach so the public understands behind these bills, because as you read them, a lot of them are difficult to decipher. What's their real intent here? What are they trying to get to by this long worded bill with all kinds of definitions and identifications and words? So we'll try to make that more accessible to the public and maybe more in layman's terms. How's this going to affect you and our profession?
Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I didn't think to ask you?
I would just leave it with encouraging, if you're not a member of the IndyBar, you really should consider it. We are probably the preeminent metro bar in the country. As we go around to the National Conference of Bar Presidents and the National Conference of Bar Executives, when I was foundation president and now as leadership in the executive committee of the association, I see how well respected our bar is and how other communities, legal communities, look to IndyBar as to how to lead and what to do to impact and benefit their members. And it just shows me the benefits that the IndyBar provides to their members, and to be involved in that, even if you're just a member, but get notice of the different programs that are available that might benefit you. So in closing, I would just make a plug for IndyBar. If you're not a member, think about it. Contact me, contact Julie Armstrong, who's our executive director, or anybody on the executive committee, and we'll be happy to talk with you about the benefits of IndyBar. And if you're a young lawyer that think you need some mentoring, feel free to reach out to me, and we'll do in our Mentor Connect program, we'll put you together with somebody that can assist you.
Alrighty, so that'll do for this week's interview. Lee, thank you again so much for joining me today. And to our listeners, stick around after our sponsor break to hear this week's headlines.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
Welcome back. Managing editor Daniel Carson and reporter Maura Johnson and I are here in our Monument Circle studio to give you the rundown on the latest legal news. So let's get started. Today's Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Happy New Year. The Indiana Supreme Court has accepted transfer of a case in which a patient accused her Lake County doctor of sexual misconduct. The Indiana Court of Appeals affirmed the case in July, allowing it to proceed in Lake Superior Court without going before a medical review panel. The appellate court held the complaint did not fall under the state's Medical Malpractice Act. Taylor Kreider saw Dr. Jatinder Kanzel in 2016 and 2017 and alleged that his examination of her eczema resulted in him touching her in a sexual way that wasn't related to medical treatment. Kanzel has denied any inappropriate conduct. He argued that the claims are subject to the Medical Malpractice Act and should be heard by a medical review panel, not the Lake Superior Court. Kreider's lawsuit says her mother accompanied her to doctor's appointments early on, but eventually stopped doing so. That's when Kanzel's demeanor and conduct changed, according to Kreider. According to Kreider's deposition, Kanzel touched her chest, bottom, and thighs and told her he needed to, quote, check everywhere. which she believed until she says she realized he was touching her in a sexual way. Also, Kreider claimed Kanzel spoke to her in a different voice than the one he used when others were in the room and told her that she was a, quote, very pretty girl. Additionally, she said he asked her questions about her boyfriend, told her to shave her legs because men prefer smooth legs, and asked whether her boyfriend cared that she worked at Hooters. Now, going to Maura for news on a lawsuit from a doctor.
An Indianapolis doctor has sued the Indiana Department of Health and members of the state medical licensing board over the enforcement of a state law that requires physicians performing abortions to report certain information to the state despite new federal health privacy requirements that appear to prohibit such disclosures. Christina Seifries filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court of Southern Indiana on December 23rd, the same day physicians were required to begin complying with the federal Reproductive Health Care Privacy Rule, which amends federal regulations under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, widely known as HIPAA. The federal rule prohibits disclosure of individuals' protected health information when it could be used to investigate, impose liability on, or identify anyone seeking, obtaining, providing, or facilitating reproductive health care. The plaintiff's lawsuit says the federal law is in direct conflict with Indiana Code, which requires state physicians who perform abortions to submit terminated pregnancy reports to the Indiana Department of Health. These reports are used to enforce Indiana's laws governing when a physician can legally provide an abortion in the state, according to the lawsuit. Representatives for the state health department and the medical licensing board told the Indiana lawyer that they do not comment on pending litigation. The federal privacy rule was promulgated in April 2024, and the plaintiff says state and federal authorities have not been able to offer guidance as to how to resolve the conflict by the December 2024 compliance date. The lawsuit stated it would be impossible for physicians to comply with both laws concurrently, and when there is an incompatibility between state and federal law preempts state law. The doctor said that if she were to submit an abortion report to the state health department after December 23rd, she and her employer would be subject to criminal and civil penalties in violation of HIPAA. However, if she did not submit a report, she could lose her medical license in the state. Because Indiana's law requiring abortion reports is designed to assure compliance with the state's abortion laws, any reports physicians submit, quote, would necessarily be used or disclosed for a prohibited purpose under the Reproductive Health Care Privacy lawsuit stated. The terminated pregnancy reports have been at the center of a separate political scuffle for months, since the state health department announced it would no longer release individual terminated pregnancy reports following the enactment of the state's near-total abortion ban, which sharply curtailed reproductive health care access. The department still releases aggregated reports. The health department decided against releasing the reports in January 2024 after the state's public access counselor issued an opinion that said the reports could be, quote, reverse engineered to identified patients, especially in smaller communities, end quote. In April, Republican Attorney General Todd Rokita issued an advisory opinion that these reports should be considered public record. The anti-abortion group Voices for Life filed a lawsuit seeking to regain access to the reports, but lost at the trial court level and has announced plans to appeal. In her separate lawsuit, Seifries is seeking declaratory judgment and preliminary and permanent injunctive relief.
Thanks, Maura. You also have more medical news. What can you tell us?
The American Civil Liberties Union has requested the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals grant a review of its earlier decision to reverse a preliminary injunction against the state law banning gender-affirming medical care for transgender youth. In November, the Seventh Circuit voted 2-1 to vacate the district court's temporary injunction on Senate-enrolled Act 480, which bans medical practitioners from providing gender transition procedures to minors. The ACLU and ACLU of Indiana said in a joint statement on the Indiana chapter's website, quote, since this ban took effect, it has had devastating consequences for trans youth in Indiana, their families, and their medical providers. Our clients have been forced to seek care out of state, and the in-state providers they see for regular checkups and other medical conditions are prohibited from even discussing the gender-affirming treatment they are receiving elsewhere. Gender-affirming care is well-studied, necessary, and life-saving care and we want transgender youth throughout Indiana to know that we will continue fighting for their medical treatment and defending their constitutional rights," end quote. When the vote came down last fall, Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita said on X, quote, "The 7th District Court of Appeals decision today is a huge win for Hoosiers and will help protect our most precious gift from God, our children. By rejecting the injunction against our common sense state law, dangerous and irreversible gender transition procedures for minors will remain banned in Indiana," end quote. Shortly after the law was enacted in April 2023, a group of transgender children, their parents, and a physician from Mosaic Health and Healing Arts Incorporated sued Indiana officials for enforcing it. The plaintiffs argued the law violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, the First Amendment's Free Speech Clause, and the Affordable Care Act. Indiana's Southern District Court granted the ACLU of Indiana's request for a preliminary injunction in June 2023, which extended to 2 of the law's prohibitions, puberty-blocking drugs and hormone therapy. That injunction did not extend to the law's 3rd prohibition, gender reassignment surgery, because no provider in Indiana performs the procedure. In its November 2024 opinion, the Circuit Court said the law does not violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause because the law does not classify based on sex. In response to the appellee's claim that the law infringes on a parent plaintiff's authority to make medical decisions for their kids because the law doesn't include a provision allowing the treatment if the parent does, the court stated that the appellee's evaluation of the law was too broad. The ACLU stated on December 27th that the law violates the Equal Protection Clause by prohibiting transgender youth from receiving necessary treatment, and that it violates the due process rights of parents to direct the medical care of their minor children in consultation with medical professionals. The law also contains a prohibition on, quote, aiding and abetting young persons to receive the banned procedures, which the lawsuit's plaintiffs argue violates the First Amendment rights of medical providers to refer their minor patients to out-of-state practitioners who can lawfully provide this medical care. In December, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments in a challenge against a similar law in Tennessee. The court is expected to issue a decision in the case sometime this year.
Thanks, Maura. Now over to Daniel on a new report from the Fair Housing Center.
Marion County foreclosure filing numbers are starting to approach and surpass pre-pandemic levels as rising home prices and interest rates, higher insurance premiums, and a slew of other factors have put more and more homeowners under extreme pressure to keep up with payments. The county's upward foreclosure trend is featured in a new Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana report, The State of Fair Housing in Indiana, Foreclosure Filings in Marion County, which was released December 18th. According to the FHCCI, new assessments resulting in higher property taxes, escalating homeowner insurance premiums, and rising costs for necessary home repairs are major barriers in someone's ability to keep a home. Some of the report's key findings included that in 2023, there were 1,534 foreclosure filings in Marion County, a 24% increase from 1,236 in 2022. However, from January to July 2024, there were already 958 filings. Indiana and some of its cities frequently rank among the highest for foreclosure filing rates. In November 2024, Indiana was the 4th highest state nationally, with one filing for every 3,567 housing units during that month. Amy Nelson, the Fair Housing Center's executive director, acknowledged the numbers are nowhere near those of the foreclosure crisis in the late 2000s. The report pointed out that at the height of the foreclosure crisis, Indianapolis was averaging 1,000 foreclosure filings a month. Quote, "We wanted to raise awareness that these numbers are picking up," end quote, Nelson said. The report also looked at causes of foreclosures and stated that with the rapid increase in housing prices since the start of the pandemic, some home buyers may have overextended their budgets trying to buy a home.
Thanks, Daniel. The Indiana Supreme Court accepted the resignation of an Indiana attorney involved in a fatal drunk driving case in May 2023. In May 2024, Jacob Agee was sentenced to 7 years in prison with 2 years suspended for operating a vehicle while intoxicated and causing death in a May 2023 crash. In August 2024, Agee was suspended immediately from the practice of law in the state because he was found guilty of a crime punishable by a felony. His resignation from the bar of the state of Indiana is effective immediately as of December 19th, according to an order signed by Chief Justice Loretta Rush. Any further attorney disciplinary proceedings against Agee are dismissed as moot because of his resignation. Agee's resignation only removes him from the practice of law. It does not relieve him from any liability he has for misconduct under civil or criminal law. Agee is ineligible to petition for reinstatement to the practice for 5 years. If he seeks reinstatement, the misconduct in his affidavit of resignation and any other allegations may be addressed in the reinstatement process. Going back to Daniel for news out of Delaware County.
An 18-year-old Delaware County man faces decades in prison after a jury convicted him of selling fentanyl-laced drugs that resulted in the 2023 overdose deaths of an adult and a juvenile. According to the Delaware County Prosecutor's Office, a jury took approximately an hour to convict Jackson Engel of 2 Level 1 felony charges related to dealing resulting in death, as well as another felony count of conspiracy to commit dealing in a narcotic drug. Delaware Circuit Court Judge Judy Calhoun set sentencing for January 14th. Court documents showed the state filed a petition for waiver of juvenile jurisdiction in Engel's case. He was 17 when the alleged incidents took place in July and September 2023, according to court records. In one incident, Engel was accused of purchasing a computer off Facebook Marketplace with counterfeit $100 bills and selling it to an adult for cash in pressed blue pills known as M30s, which commonly contain fentanyl. He allegedly sold one of the pills to a juvenile in September 2023. That juvenile was found deceased by his sister the next day, and his cause of death was identified as acute fentanyl and cocaine intoxication. The second incident involved the alleged sale of 2 M30 pills by Engel to an 18-year-old recent high school graduate in July 2023. That person also died the following day, and his cause of death was identified as acute fentanyl intoxication. Engel admitted to police that he had used M30s himself and almost died from his use of the pills.
Thanks, Daniel. Community Health Network has agreed to pay out another $145 million to settle claims that it engaged in a years-long scheme to recruit physicians and pay them huge salaries and bonuses in return for referrals. The payment includes $6.3 million to Community's former Chief Financial Officer, Thomas Fisher, who claimed he was fired in 2013 in retaliation for repeatedly asking questions about the large salaries paid to recruit physicians. Community revealed the payment in a financial filing. It includes legal expenses that took Community's expense in the matter to $145.7 million. The amount is in addition to the $345 million that Community paid in December 2023 to settle much of the case with the U.S. Department of Justice. The latest settlement agreement is designed to finally close the door on an 11-year legal struggle that's played out in the U.S. District Court in Indianapolis, racking up nearly 900 motions, orders, and other filings. It resolves the remaining claims with Fisher in which the Department of Justice and the state of Indiana did not intervene. A payment of the DOJ and state of Indiana settlement of $135 million plus interest was paid earlier in December, Community said. The $6.3 million payment to Fisher will be paid in January. Fisher's attorney's fees are still being negotiated, but Community accrued $14 million in its consolidated balance sheet. And finally, to wrap up this week's headlines, Maura, tell us about what our next print edition will feature.
For our next print edition, I'm taking a look at the LEAF Initiative, a project by the Southern District of Indiana in the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives that places law enforcement resources on domestic violence offenders who possess firearms illegally. The initiative was enacted in October 2020 and named after Breanne Leith, an officer with the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department who was killed in the line of duty while responding to a domestic disturbance call. I'll be speaking with leaders about how the initiative is going and what goals they have for 2025. You can read more about it in our January 15th print issue.
Okay, that'll do for this week's headlines. As always, if you want more legal news, check us out at theindianalawyer.com.